As you can see from the screen behind me, this morning we're going to be talking about the SAT and ACT and its role in college admission. And we'll be hearing from several of our counselors this morning, but we're really glad to see you here. If you have questions, feel free to ask. There will be time at the end as well to ask for questions. So welcome, and I'd like to introduce Mrs. Wendy Cadwell, one of our college counselors, to get started.
Good morning. So, our little clicky things. I hit that. Alright, so just an overview of kind of what we're going to cover, only because sometimes we'll touch on something that we're going to cover in more detail in a little while, so if you know it's kind of coming up, we can maybe answer your questions. So the first thing we're going to talk about is not just testing, but testing in the context of the entire admissions process, because I think we've all experienced when we're dealing with seniors and often seniors' parents, which there probably aren't too many senior parents in here, but sometimes the importance of testing is given too much weight, okay? It's not going to compensate for some other issues, and so I just want to kind of give you a presentation of the overall factors that college looks at in admission, and then we'll talk about the test optional schools and what that means and how you find out what those schools are. And then Mr. Fuller is going to cover the actual format of the ACT, SAT, how you register for it, all that good stuff, when you should be taking it. And then Mr. Borchert and Brother Tom are going to be covering a couple of the free test prep things that we offer that the school pays for, which is PrepMe and Schmoo, and then also show you some other resources that are on your children's Blackboard page. Okay, so those are the main topics that we will be covering today. So when we talk about the factors in admissions for college decisions, it's not a black and white situation. Every college has at their discretion their ability to prioritize what they feel is the most important. So what I'm representing to you today is kind of going to be an overall accumulation of data that's been done from MACAP, which is the organization that we all belong to that has now polled colleges to see what they are holding as most important. So unfortunately, there are no magic formulas, there are no set numbers. I know that would probably bring us all comfort. I would love to be able to say, yes, if you have 3 activities and these are your test scores and these are your GPA, you're going to get into such and such a school. But unfortunately, it does not work like that. Large schools, so small schools do pay a lot more attention to those things that we call tipping factors, like your essay and your extracurricular and letters of recommendation, things of that nature, where larger schools, often state-supported schools, are more mathematically driven based on test scores and GPA, as well as residency in the state. Okay. So some of the important factors are the courses that your students take. Okay, so are they academic core classes? Do they stay in math and science for a 3rd and 4th year? Do they stay in foreign language for a 3rd and 4th year? So they want to see rigor. So this is probably, if I had to say, my most common question that I think counselors get asked, is it better to take an honors class and get a B, or take a regular class and get an A? That's probably the most common question, and my answer always is, it's better to take the honors class and get the A. Okay? And the reason is, as harsh as that sounds, the reality is that if you're an A and B student and you never take an honors class, you are going to be, it's going to be questioned why. You're a good student. Why are you not challenging yourself? They do expect that students are availing themselves of all the opportunities at a school like Chaminade. Okay, we have way more AP classes in a school our size. We traditionally have many honors classes, And if your student is doing well in school, the expectation that is in the areas that they have, a strong interest in, they should be challenging themselves in that area. It has happened where I've had students and where they are straight A students, but have never taken an honors and AP class, and they did not get into most of the schools that they applied to. Okay, because that's a red flag. What is going on here? Grades received. So obviously that's the GPA. Placement in classes. Okay, placement in class means we don't rank here, but that's traditionally what you would hear it referred to as. We do provide a GPA distribution to colleges, and that's on our academic profile, which is actually on our website, so if you're curious what it looks like, you can see that there. But it's kind of to let them know, we have this many students with a 4.0 and above, this many students between a 3.8 and a 4.0, just so a college has a context to put that student in their class. SAT and ACT scores, that's what we're going to talk about in a minute. Essays. Recommendation letters could be from counselors, could be from teachers, could be from an employer, Boy Scout leader, coach, many things. Then there are extracurricular activities. And again, just like there's no cut and dry answer for anything, how many activities? Really 2 to 3 very strong activities where the student is able to show leadership. That's what colleges are looking for. They don't want them to have 12 clubs where they really haven't done anything other than show up. Okay, that is not impressive. And then the interview, which is part of some schools' application process. So what matters most? What's the #1 ranked important thing? The GPA. So this is a conversation that we have a lot with parents in probably second semester, junior year. GPA, but their test scores are really strong, but their GPA is lower than they would like, or the parent would like, okay? So what that usually indicates to a college is that this student was way more capable if they did really well on their test, like really, really well, and their GPA is not in line with that. That is concerning to a college because it indicates maybe a lack of effort or a lack of motivation. Now, if there's a reason for it, we've had students I had a student that was the primary caregiver for 3 younger siblings, and that was all she could do. She did the very best she could do, and that needs to be explained. But for a lot of students, there's just a discrepancy. So test scores are never going to be as important in the college admission process as the GPA. Okay? It cannot, 4 years of work cannot be made up by one Saturday morning. Okay? When you think of it that way, it kind of makes sense, right? And also with that said, if you have a really strong GPA and your student doesn't test well, okay, which is not atypical. Some students, the SAT in particular, some students don't do well on that. It has nothing to do with their intelligence, it has nothing to do with their GPA. That again is something that should be explained in the context of the counselor letter, that the student doesn't test particularly well, but they'd rather see an average or, maybe a little above average test score, but a really strong GPA than vice versa, okay? And then also, just so you are aware, many colleges do recalculate our GPA in whatever form they wish to, okay? Mostly it's core academic courses, so our math, science, foreign language, social studies, and leave out electives, such as oftentimes, depending on the institution, it can be religion, PE, computer, health, but it varies from institution to institution.
Can you qualify a little bit when you say this discrepancy between high test scores and low GPA? When you say low, are you talking 3.0, 2.5, or are you talking 3.5?
I'm talking, if a student has a 3.0, and they get a 2100 on the SAT, there's something going on.
Okay.
And it may be something valid. It's
Right.
not even that it's something that the student's done wrong, but that's something that would require an explanation, probably from not only from the counselor, but also from the student on their application.
Thank you.
So this is just to give you an idea. I think this graphic is really interesting, but I'm kind of weird, so I don't know. I just think this is a great, so these are colleges reported to this organization what they hold as the most important factors, and many of them are what we've discussed. But you can see how grades are the top. Strength of curriculum is more important than their test scores. Okay, so I think that's really important to keep in mind. And then you'll see the GPA in all their courses comes after. So they're really concerned about how they're doing in the core academic classes. But then I also find this fascinating, and I know we're talking about extracurriculars today, but see where that is? Okay, it's important, they look at it, but again, it's not going to compensate for the factors that colleges find more important. Yes?
How many schools, what is NACAC? Is it hundreds or thousands of colleges?
National Association,
North American
College Admissions
Council.
Counselors.
So
So basically, this is an organization that college admissions as well as high school side all belong to, and so these were all the colleges that belong to NACAC, which is every college in the United States, and they ranked in importance, and this is the data that they collected.
what's the bottom?
Oh, that actually says, it's cut off on my slide, employment, like job. I tried to fix it, I couldn't. It was 10:30, I couldn't do
I
it.
see subject test scores and SAT-2 scores
Uh-huh.
way down low.
Yep.
Are they phasing those out?
I would say probably eventually they probably will be phased out. There are still some schools that require it. Georgetown's wild and they require 3. And that's a lot.
Do you still recommend to the kids that they take it if they've taken the course?
On a case-by-case basis, our students that traditionally are going to be applying to the more selective schools or possibly going to be, yes, we would counsel them to be taking the SAT-2s. UCs used to require them, they no longer do, but they will consider them in the admissions process if they are reported to them.
Okay.
And you're going to go into what that is later, right?
Yes, Mr.
Okay.
Fuller's going to talk about that briefly. Okay, so last thing I'm going to share with you is test optional school. So what if you happen to have that student that just does not test well? Okay, they're very hardworking, they get great grades, they have great activities, but they are just not good test takers for whatever reason, you know. There are some schools, there are actually over 850 schools in the United States that are called test optional. And that doesn't mean they don't take test scores, but they offer the students other means to demonstrate their proficiency. Oftentimes it's a graded assignment, it can be just a GPA requirement where if you have a 3.8 and so many extracurricular activities and blah blah, they will consider you for admissions. So just because the test scores may not be where you would like them to be, there are other options to explore. So there is a nonprofit organization, the National Center for Fair and Open Testing, and their website is fabulous, so that's fairtest.org. And you can go there to see the list of schools that do not require the SAT or the ACT for admission. Okay, so we just want to give you some hope. All right, I'll turn the time over to Mr. Fuller, who's going to give you a bunch of information and hopefully will not
I'll try my best not to overwhelm. This will be more the nuts and bolts, just what to do, when to do, and how to do. So the definition of a standardized test is a test in which the same test is given in the same manner to all test takers. So there's a lot of tests in there. Basically just means student Chaminade could take the SAT, and it should reflect the same exact score as a student at Chaminade in Florida or Chaminade, New York. It should be the same for all 3 of these score is standardized. Okay, so the big differences. On the SAT is primarily a problem-solving, critical thinking type of exam. Take the information you have, the information that is given, the question that you give, and then you extrapolate and answer from there. The ACT, on the other hand, is more subject-specific knowledge. In other words, it's a culmination of what have they learned through, really, their entire 12 years of education. SAT and ACT are about the same length, but those lengths are a little bit different because the SAT is 3 parts. Critical reading part, A mathematics part, you'll see I put, there's no trigonometry, that's about as in detail of the differences I want to get. And then there is a writing component. The ACT, on the other hand, is 5 minutes shorter, but it is jam-packed with basically 5 different subjects: English, math, reading, science, and then a writing optional. General rule for all of this testing stuff, college stuff, if it says optional, that means mandatory. Especially for our Chaminade students who tend to be very competitive. So just kind of keep that in mind. If they're taking the ACT, they should be taking the writing portion. The last biggest difference would be the SAT does penalize for incorrect answers. So don't just guess, it will actually bring the score down. On the ACT, however, the time is running short and it is a very time-intensive test. Start picking B and just go all the way down and hope that
B, that's the right one?
B
Okay.
is the one I always recommend. And the reason is it's in the middle, but it's on the positive side. It's a little bit positive,
Okay.
that's why. Okay, so testing timeline. So if you have a freshman, congratulations on having a freshman and welcome. They took the plan in October. The plan is basically just the pre-ACT. In other words, it's a great way to get them used to high school level standardized testing. The next year, in the fall, they'll take the PSAT on the same exact date, and that is the preliminary SAT. This, again, is really just to get them prepped. They don't need to do any additional test prep at that point. They're doing it by being in their classes, taking the harder courses, and doing well. But that's their test prep. Come junior year, again on that fateful October day, they'll take the PSAT. Yes?
My son's a freshman. I didn't know that he took the pre-ACT. Where do I find out how he did on that?
You should have received scores. We'll talk after.
They'll come out in December.
December.
December,
Oh, that
right.
was
PSATs that come back, yes.
Well, they will get them in December.
Okay, December it is. Okay. Alright. So fall of junior year, they retake the PSAT, and this is a national merit qualifying exam for those students. And that's typically for very, very, very good test takers. Not many students will actually qualify, but it can be a very important test for some students. And that fall PSAT is really their last chance to practice taking a standardized test in a setting, getting prepared for that. So the first time we really recommend that they take either the SAT or the ACT for the first time is the spring of their junior year. That way, they've had at least 5 semesters of high school preparation to get them ready for it. And all of the seniors who were scrambling at the end to get all of their testing done are done. So they're really just going against the other juniors. Do recommend that they take both. As a blanket statement to all of our students, take both, see what happens. You never know which one you'll perform better on. So take both and go from there. And then recommend repeating the best test that you take. Whether in the ACT or SAT, doesn't matter, but retake it in May or June. That way they kind of have the 2 different scores to draw from. If it's a school that super scores, we can go from there as well. And then the last one, the last time they should really be taking the SAT or ACT is in the fall of their senior year. December is really the last dates possible, kind of. But really by November they should have everything wrapped up. Okay, so the costs. Pretty much the same cost within $1.50. SAT is $51, ACT is $52.50. Okay. When they sign up in the spring of their junior year, they will say, do you want to send your scores to any schools? Well, really no, because there's no schools that you're actually applying to yet. So you just kind of leave those scores there. When they retake in the fall, for the SAT, they will send, when you send in your scores, it will send all of the SATs that student has ever taken, if it's 2 or 3, and that'll also include any SAT subject or SAT 2s that they've taken as well. The ACT is a little different. When you're sending those scores, you're actually only sending one sitting. So if for whatever reason you have to send more than one sitting of the SAT, you have to pay for it twice. The cost is roughly
ACT, you mean?
50-ish,
Yeah.
so 1150. Okay.
You switched from ACT to,
I'm sorry.
you switched from ACT to SAT. So is it the ACT that you have to, they charge you for each time you send it?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. Yes. Yes. Sorry. Okay. And when should you be sending them? Approximately 2 weeks before your application is actually being submitted. That way the scores will come in at the same time as the application, everything will go into the file together, and they'll be ready to go, complete application. Okay. So a preference. No, colleges do not have a preference. SAT or ACT does not matter to them. They have a scale that they use to compare them, so it really won't make any difference. Really, the scores you're going to send are the best scores. They do better in the SAT, send those. They do better on the ACT, send those. But send the scores that represent your student the best. Some schools do require, as Mrs. Calgill already mentioned, subject exams. So Georgetown, Boston College, Duke, etc. You can see those are more selected schools, more difficult schools to get into. So do keep in mind that sometimes you'll have to send both. Okay, and then we will start with Prep Me. Mr. Orchard's going to cover that.
All right, so
Excuse me, what is the SAT 2?
It's a subject exam,
Oh,
so
those are subject.
there's a variety of
Okay.
different areas. Yeah.
So now you guys have kind of heard about what the SAT is and what the ACT is, when they should take it, things like that. So now the question comes, what should they do for prep? How do they get ready for these exams? So besides going to school, doing well in your classes, taking challenging courses, there are some other steps we can take. All right, we went ahead and we purchased this program called Prep Me under Naviance. Okay, most of you guys have probably heard of Naviance. If you're a freshman parent, your students will be registering for this second semester. You'll get more information about this second semester for freshman parents. Okay, if you're sophomores or above and you don't have your own login for this, or you've never heard of this, don't hesitate to email your counselor. We'll get you that information so that you can kind of sign in. However, the Prep Me is only going to be available on the student's profile. Okay, it will not be there on your profile, on the parent's profile, only the students. So when they log in, this is kind of the home screen for Naviance. Prep Me is going to be there in that top left corner. All right. So what Prep Me is this is going to be kind of taking the place of getting one of those SAT books. Now you guys have probably seen those. They're about this thick, and they're very general. It's like, all right, well, here's all the information you study. Have fun with it. Okay. You might be good in this, but we don't know for sure. So just keep on studying it. So the beauty of this program is what it does is it'll do prep for both SAT and ACT. So you go in there and there's going to be diagnostics tests that the students are going to take. By taking these diagnostics tests, what the program does is it starts developing lesson plans for your child that will help them in the areas that they need help with. So let's say they're extremely strong in critical reading, but their math skills are the ones they really need to focus on. Then those lessons are going to be designed towards those math skills that he needs to improve, he or she needs to improve on in order to really bring up that score altogether. All right. So the beauty of it over just the books is it's very tailored. The books are very general. They're designed for everyone, but these are very tailored towards your specific student. All right. And they can be studying for both. So like we said, we really recommend that students take the SAT and the ACT. So before they take the SAT, maybe they do the prep for that on here. And then once they're done with that, or once they get close and they know they're going to take the ACT later, then they can start the prep for that. Okay, so every week, it's designed that every week there's going to be different lessons that they need to do. Then at the end of the week, there'll be a little quiz. Depending on how they do on that, the system will develop a lesson plan for the next week. And they'll go from there and there and there. Okay, does that make sense? Yes?
Is it available now?
Yep.
Okay.
It's available now. So I'm just going to quickly show you So that's what it looks like when you first log in.
And do they have some kind of a timeline of when you're going to take the test and when they should start?
Yeah, to ask the student to put in the test date they think they're taking.
Okay.
Obviously, that's can be adjusted.
And the nice thing is when there are full-length practice tests on this, there is a timer on the top right, so they can actually see how much time they have left. So if one of their issues is they're not finishing in time, or they're really struggling staying on top of, you know, the timing, it'll help them with that as well. All right. So when you first log in, that's what you're going to see. You go to Prep Me. Hopefully our internet is a little bit quicker today.
Or not?
Perhaps not. But it's really simple. Once you click on this, it's going to pop up and it'll say SAT and ACT, and you pick one of them. And you do that, and you can start doing those diagnostics tests. And it'll give you graphs so you can kind of see your progress, you know, if you've dipped at all or if you're continually getting better. But it's a very visual program, so the kids like to see like how much better they're doing. Okay?
And is this a self-motivated program, or do you all encourage them to go on and?
Well, we show on it as counselors, like when we're talking about test prep. A lot of times this will come up end of sophomore year or beginning of junior year. We will tell them, like, this is a great program for you to do. But, you know, yes, it's on the computer, so it's really up to them. But if you guys know about it, oh, have you done your prep me for the week? Let me see how you're doing.
The parents actually get weekly emails telling what the student has done.
Starting sophomore year?
Well, if the student goes,
Started the
Oh,
course.
whenever they start.
if you're like, this is what we're doing, we're not paying for it, you will get, it's every Sunday night, you get an email saying this is what your child did for the week.
Oh, really?
So you
So
don't even have to buy it.
you can see here, I went into the ACT, and it has the diagnostics test for each section. You'll see at the top my schedule, so it'll show you kind of what your schedule is for the week. The reports, so this is where you're going to see kind of the progress on how they're doing. And you go from there.
Is this available in the summertime for them to
Yep.
use? They keep their computers in the summertime?
Mhm.
Yes. And this is also available from any computer. Like Navia, like you can do it from your home computer, it doesn't have to be just an laptop.
And you can restart it too. So let's say they take it one time, they take the test, and they want to start over and see where they're doing. You can restart it as well.
And there are different tests as they retake them, or is it the same test over and over again?
I believe what they do is they jumble up the questions and whatnot. There's a whole bank of questions that the tests are kind of chosen from.
Does it cover subject test?
We do not have a subject test on this, but the other program we're going to show you does have some subject testing.
Hey, has anybody ever measured the benefit of going through the program? And kids that go through the Naviance system and run, do 25% better? I mean, I'm not quite sure.
There's no numbers.
Anyways.
We haven't had those numbers yet, just because I think we've been using the program for a year and a half, 2 years now. So, it's one of those things that, if nothing else, they're getting what information is going to be on it, how to budget your time, what it's like to really sit down for a 4-hour test. There are some benefits that you might get. As far as the scores, I'm not sure. I don't have the information on that.
There has been data collected, we collected some as well in general, about test prep versus, like a book or an online test prep as compared to a, Princeton review kind of setting where you pay a lot of money. And across the board, test prep that's done on your own, such as through PrepMe, is just as useful as the expensive paid for if the student does.
Right, doesn't.
That's the thing.
Yeah, and some of these, some of the programs that you're going to spend thousands of dollars for, the difference is that you're going to have someone sitting there with them. So it depends on how your student's going to learn the best, what their self-motivation's like, and how willing you guys are to kind of stay on top of them too and make sure they're doing it.
Have you met with juniors to tell them there's SAT coming up?
Every junior has been met with and explained this, everything.
Every single junior?
For the songs we've done, you haven't talked about
You haven't heard
sophomores don't know about this yet?
Sophomores, as far as the prep meet, probably not, because we don't bring this up until it gets closer
Towards
towards when they're start doing it at the beginning of sophomore year, by the time they're going to take it,
You okay?
by the time you're going to take it second semester junior year, they could be burned out. And we want to avoid that as well. Plus, they're learning so much more in class that would be beneficial than just doing it.
I noticed that they can start testing in January. Would you recommend, because they just kind of have out of finals, would you recommend that they wait more mid-spring to test?
That's going to be really up to them because the way our school year is different now, you know, we're finishing early, they can do that. It's whether or not they're going to be able to focus since it's the beginning of the semester and whatnot. They're going to be having some new classes, restarting information, so it's good for them to really get a good start to that semester. So it really depends on the student whether or not. So we're going to move on to the next one, and then we'll answer some questions towards the end. Okay, so I'm going to, Brother Tom's going to come up here, and he's going to talk about SHMOOP, which is another test prep program.
There is no C in SHMOOP, but because we're at Chaminade, sometimes people put C into everything. This wasn't my original page in this, but anyway.
There you go.
JT, do you know how to get back to SHMOOP?
Here.
Probably with his too. There you go. There it is. Right at the top.
Okay, got it. SHMOOP is amazing. It's more free than prepping. No, they're both free. The problem is that when you say free with something, people therefore say, well, it can't be of any value. You know? And that's a massive mistake. Similarly with Khan Academy, how people, well, it's free. I mean, how good could it be? This is an amazing place. We have a flyer in your material today as to how each child would sign up for a free SHMOOP account. The school, Chaminade, pays for the licensing. So we could say, well, this one is really not free because the school pays for it. But what I love about it is it not only has test prep, it's got prep for AP exams, it's got subject area like history, math, everything. It's got videos in calculus on linear progression, which I know nothing about, but I've seen it. I've looked at the videos. I use SHMOOP with my Chinese students, showing them the writing lab, for example. It's got 5 different kinds of essays, analysis, comparison, all of that. Everything you could imagine that a student would actually need to be successful, from having an online tutor all the way up to test prep, okay? And it is free to you, and the school pays a fee for it. We have an advocate for SHMOOP, who is our librarian, Kelly Benning, who is right there. So if you don't believe me, go to the library and see what she also has to say about the program. I have to tell you, our English teachers don't like it because it really breaks down the novel in ways that you might not actually have to, what do they call it, meeting the literature or something like that? You know, English teachers are different. I hope I didn't offend anyone.
But I'm an English teacher and I love SHMOOP. So.
Okay, so look at the list of, nice going, sir. Look at the list of, that's not where I wanted to go right now. So there's a list of test preps in here that I was just showing you here on this ACT, ACT Explorer, ACT Plan, AP exams, high school exit, the whole range, but the critical ones here are ACT and SAT. And SHMOOP has seriously everything that you were talking about, the diagnostics, the practice, but the beauty about it is you're taking it in real time and you're getting results at the end of that test. You're also taking drills. So if I go to SAT and hope the internet is semi-quick.
The list is on the back of your sheet. There's 2 sides to that sheet.
Okay. Look, this is the sheet that I went to. There are drills in here and practice exams. They are 2 of the most critical parts of this. I don't have time to go over all of it, but drills and practice exams are what, needless to say, practice exams is self-explanatory. There's a full-blown practice exam in there. with the reading. I'm only talking English, but it's also math, and in the ACT, it's all the subject areas. But within that, for the practice exam, it goes all the way through to the scoring. It's got a running clock, just like you mentioned earlier, and it times out at a certain point, and then you have to take your score. It's got multiple tests, okay? And multiple drills. They don't change, they don't scramble. They are preset tests. So the ACT reading is the ACT reading, but there are several of them, enough to make you really tired of taking tests. But maybe what's more important is there are many drills. So let me just show you, for example. Again, like there are many drills. And this is in sentence completion. Then there are drills in short passages, long passages, passage comparison. That's nasty. Do you know the passage comparison? Yeah, that's where there are two passages, and it asks questions that compare and contrast the information in both, and you really have to be clued in. So that's why some people might not like the SAT. So I'm just going to click this so you get a sample of questions. Okay, and you may not be able to read it from there, but it's just like an ACT. It mimics it. I'm sorry, an SAT. You click the one that you believe to be correct, and it grades out when you press score this test at the end of the test. So it's so much material. Now, you could go down the street and have a guy stand in front of you and say all the same things, not nearly as effectively, and pay them $1,200, okay? I mean, you could do that, or you could listen to me and say, let's work on the Schmoop free program from school that I'm paying $12,000 or $14,000 for. You know, you need to spend it as a high-cost item because then it will take on value. So, drills galore. This is just in the reading section. Drills in every area. Math the same way for the ACT. Drills in every area. Actual tests. Scoring. Seconds. And it actually explains why your answer was wrong. It actually tells you on here, well, Ingrate and Oblivious are not correct. Really, it's Crusader and Obscure because Crusader, blah, blah, blah. So it's going to tell you what is wrong with the answer. All right? And then it's kind of fun because you can say, I'm guessing, remove my choice, come back to this. You know, it's an interactive process rather than the darn book that we're stuck on. You know, that monster that you know, you're not going to take anywhere with you. So I'm a massive advocate for it, not just for SAT and ACT, but also for your daily classroom work. And I just want to throw out Khan Academy also. Like, why would anybody get a math tutor when Khan Academy is free? KhanAcademy.org. Why would anybody pay? So you have to register for Schmoop, and you have to use the magic word from Chaminade, which is nuclear. Why? Kelly picked that? I'm not sure.
they gave it to me.
Okay.
Schmoop gave me that word.
Rate, that's my time is up.
It is, and I just want to show you guys one more
What's the password
resource.
again?
Khan Academy.
Khan Academy. We'll post it under the college and coffee announcement thing.
If you go to chaminadelibrary.org, that's my website, there's a tab that says online learning, and all of that is there as well.
That's how he couldn't get on.
So chaminadelibrary.org.
So, and then the other resource we have is on your child's Blackboard page. So every grade level has a counseling Blackboard page, and under external links, I know this is like impossible to see unless you have amazing vision, but whoops.
It's really nice.
Oh, it's really nice. But these are all free test prep as well. So as Brother Tom was saying, you know, we do pay for Schmoop. If you think of it as part of your tuition, maybe it'll seem more. And we also do pay for Prep Me as well. So, but these are other, like number2.com. So there's many other resources on there as well that are free test prep for SAT and ACT, and we can actually add Khan Academy to that because that is a lot of what our
This
students
is
are
Blackboard.
using. This is Blackboard. So you don't have a login to Blackboard. This is what your child uses for all their classes, but you may have their login if you're checking homework and stuff. But they each have a counseling page that's appropriate to their grade level, and they will have it for 4 years. And this is under external links, and we post a lot of stuff on there for the students to use as resources and information. So we have about 15 minutes left, and we would be happy to answer any questions you have. We know we gave you a lot of information. Yes, up at the top.
I can't remember when it's appropriate to take a subject test. If you're a freshman and you just finished honors biology, is it time to take a subject test?
No.
But at what point do you do that?
Usually sophomore year would be the first year that you would want to consider taking it. And maybe if you're in honors chem, that would be a little iffy. AP World History, you could take the subject test at the end for that. You need to remember, like, kids that are taking the chem subject test are probably students that are in junior or senior year taking maybe AP Chem.
But isn't it better to take it right after you've had the class, or?
It is, yes. So with math, like if they're in honors pre-calculus, we would want them to take that at the end of their junior year. So yes, it is more appropriate, but our honors classes are probably not going to prepare them 100%. It's really the AP classes that are more at the level. Honors Brit Lit is a very good preparation for the literature SAT too. So again, most of those are towards the end of their junior year, but it may be appropriate for some students to be taking it. AP World definitely, and there may be a few other students that it is appropriate for in sophomore year. Yes.
Related to that, is it more important to know which colleges your students considering and whether they require those, or should they just be taking these subject tests anyway?
Well, I think if your student's taking AP World, for example, we don't have a list generated yet. So if they're comfortable taking it, take it. I mean, it really, like we said, like it's way down here on the list.
Right.
So it's, at least if they take it, they've taken it at a time when they know the material is strongest.
Got it.
And if they don't do well, it's way down on the list. At least they tried it. You know.
I would say as a rule of thumb also, if you have a student that freshman year or sophomore year has a high to mid 3s and might be going to apply to more selective schools, then you would want to try to have that done, only because it gets really wild with the last, few junior testing and then senior year.
Yeah,
so if you can and you feel like it might be a good idea, I'd rather the student err on the side of having them than scrambling, because that
How
gets
long
a
are
lot.
those subject tests? Are they as long as the full test?
No,
What
hour
about-
and 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can do 3 in one sitting. This is how
Yeah, right.
I would recommend that too, is usually you would.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Find out about when they're offered and how to sign up. Is that something?
Collegeboard.com
And
for their
that's
counselor.
and that's up to us to do?
Collegeboard.com is we'll give you the most comprehensive, the dates, the registration. That's on the Blackboard pages too, under external links, and actstudent.org.
So ACT,
actstudent.org
okay,
and collegeboard.com.
good question.
There are registration flyers in our office with the websites and the test dates on them as well.
Yeah.
That's all.
Do any of these sites, or do you three in advising it, or give classes on how to take the test? In other words, I'm taking like the CPA exam, it's a 3-day exam. A lot of what was really useful was, it's not every day that you take a 3-day exam, and just knowing what to do, how to, when you don't know an answer, move on, don't waste your time. Time management, like reading comprehension, read the questions, and then go read the text, so you know where to hone in. All those kind of little ones.
Smooth
Smooth
has,
Pass.
Smooth has really good tips for test taking. It's written for students, not for adults, so when you read it, it might roll your eyes a bit. But they roll their eyes at our stuff all the time. So, but they do the breakdown on how you prepare for it, what it looks like, how you attack questions, and then it's going to give you the real specifics remember what JT said about check B all the way when you're on the ACT when you are guessing, and don't do that on the SAT because you'll die. So it is,
You don't
but
want that.
it's pages of stuff and lots of strategies for it on Schmoop.
But the only other formal thing we do is during the summer, there is a class that's offered, but we don't have
Well, you
an
did,
organized.
you did the things in the fall for the PSAT. Where you had
Yes,
that-
we do
yeah,
have,
those are
have
good.
workshops for the PSAT, which would obviously carry over to taking the actual SAT. So those are offered in the fall, the testing strategies.
Right, that was good.
Yes.
So just pragmatically speaking, if I have a junior right now and I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to take the first sittings into the spring, when you say in the spring, so can I wait till after Christmas vacation to go on with the College Board and sign up?
Register.
And then think they're going to take it in March?
Yeah, you can do it for March. They wouldn't be able to, like, January deadline is probably.
Registration deadlines are usually a month before
The test.
the
And
test.
so when you say spring, you mean March?
March, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I do this until after Christmas,
You'll be fine. Yes.
What, I'm just curious, you know, it's all well and good to offer these things, and it sounds like an amazing program, but everybody's kids are trying to get good grades, and they have activities or sports. What's a reasonable expectation if you were to say to them, I want you to do Schmoop 30 minutes a week, an hour a week, 4 times a week? I mean, what is reasonable to make it useful and not just another, you know, thing that they're doing out of road? You know?
I will tell
Right.
you, the kids love Schmoop. They love it because it's written on their level, and it's funny, and it's, I mean, if you get them started, and Brother Tom will.
Yeah, but it's not Vampire Diaries, okay?
It's not, but it's better than other test prep as far as it's not painful.
What she's asking is, what's the recommended time?
What's
Well,
reasonable?
it's gonna
and
vary,
useful?
it's gonna vary because if you have a student that goes on to prep me or Schmoop in January and they're taking a test in March, the time is going to need to be more. If you have to get through it and get through the material, make sure you're doing well. If you have a student that is gonna do it right now, in junior, and they're gonna start right now, and then they're gonna take the test in April, there's gonna be less time that's set up in the
Per week.
schedule. I mean, you're right, you can't overwhelm them. The grades are ultimately the most important thing. And that's why these programs tend to work well, because there is some flexibility with them in their, extracurricular. So finals week, maybe they don't do anything and they
Right.
double up the next week.
And on the program, that's why you went through the test date.
Yeah.
And it'll track you and say, this is where you need to be. It'll
Okay,
give you
so
benchmarks.
it'll give you some kind of
Yes.
schedule? to-
Yes,
Yes.
like a plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing that a student should never do, and I've run into them in the past, well, I'm not going to take calculus because I have to prepare for the SAT.
Right.
You're nuts. Calculus is way more important than where you're going to put your time and energy. So this is extra time that we're talking about here. We're not taking time away from getting A's in critical classes. That is the most important
So
thing.
staying up until 12 o'clock in the morning is not enough, so continue on until 12.
If you stand there. Yes.
Well, my daughter goes to the library anyway for lunch, but I was going to say, when you take the SATs or ACTs, sometimes if you take one as a practice test, don't some of the colleges ask for all the ones that you do take?
There are some colleges that ask you
Not
to
the practice.
disclose all of your test scores.
So if you're trying to build up, now what about the practice SATs?
Those do not go. So you should never, as a rule, you should never go take the real SAT or the real ACT without the knowledge that this at some point may be shared. It should never be, and I'm just going to go take it and see what happens. That's what kids say.
On the essay.
What? There are colleges, I will give you an example, UCLA, that says, I don't care how many times you've taken it, you must disclose all of your scores. I just had a student tell me yesterday that he was on his 6th SAT, and he is applying to many colleges that ask him
But
to
would they
disclose that.
penalize you for taking it, let's say?
They will see it as an effect of taking that exam so many times and not so much an indicator of that student's ability. It will not be seen. He broke 2,000, was very excited, and I didn't have the heart to tell him that that 2,000 is not going to hold the weight of a student that got a 2,000 on their second attempt.
I have a question about, you said you don't do rankings, but I know most of the applications ask for, what do you put?
We just put none or NA, and it's on our school profile, but we do not rank our students. NA, like not applicable, or none. Yes, I'm just trying to get some other people.
Yeah, my son is junior, and I'm thinking about, having him prepare for March SATs. But he insisted he wanted to try it in January. When I talked to the test prep school counselor, he said, it's better for him to prepare well for March than sit in for January and, let's say, don't get very good score, and then March gets very good score, then the college might start thinking, what happened? Is it real or something? What do you?
That is good information. So
how do you? As a junior is different. I sympathy with her. Their kids are different. Very hard to.
Right, but the rationale is one. Obviously, you'll have more time to study. Two is they're going to have another 2 entire semesters of math class, English class, and just think about, like, if you think about math, what you're going to learn in a 2-month period, it's going to be on that exam.
That's true.
I have a second part question, if I may. By the way, you have very good counseling member in your school, Miss Janet. She was mentioning that there is a boot camp coming up in summer of next year. What is this all about?
We have something called the Application Boot Camp, which is going to be taking a different format this year, but we will get that information to you in January. But basically, it's an intensive. It used to be 3 days. I'm not sure what the time period is going to be, but a condensed period of time where the students are able to work on their essays for college and also work on the Common App that will be open, which is in August, and they're actually physically filling out the application. This year, the UC application is also opening on August 1st, which is not ever done before, so we will also be working on that as well. So we will get the specifics to you in January when that's been decided, yes.
For more the freshman and sophomore students, one of the prep companies does offer the free full test of both the ACT and SAT in the fall. So you can have your student take that and the scores go nowhere, but it gives you a good indication of where they are, because I had my son do that.
Practice. We're also going to be offering.
We're also going to be offering one more
of the SAT.
Full-length practice SAT after the first of the year. I have to confirm the dates with the test prep company, but it'll be sent out to you in an email, so you'll know.
Those don't count, right?
Those don't count.
Only those to you and your child. They don't go to anyone.
So that's a good way of finding out.
Well, what you're hearing is that the schools, there's something called score choice, where you can choose what you send, and in theory, that is true. But as I was saying before, there are schools that say, I know you have the right to do that, but we are asking you to confirm that you are in fact sending us all your scores.
So I hope it doesn't get recorded if we have an option of just dropping it.
No, you have to cancel your score before you even knew what it was for it to not appear.
Oh, you can cancel it, but you can.
Yeah, and that would be in a situation like, we've had a few kids that go, and they get there and they're sick, or they're, and they just lay their head on the desk and they don't finish, and they're like, I feel horrible, and they cancel their score.
So you pay for it, you sit and you take it, but you cancel.
Yeah, but that's not a, that's a rare.
It's a 1 in 1,000.
A rare occurrence.
Is super score for ACT or SAT?
SAT, there are some schools that are starting to super score the ACT, but that is much less common, but I would guess in the next couple of years that that's going to become more common. So does everyone know what super score means?
No.
It's not big fries, it's so it means that they will take your highest, so on the SAT, your writing, your critical reading, and your math. If I take it in March and in June, and my math was higher in March, and my other 2 were higher in June, I can take those 3 highest scores and make this fabulous super score. The UCs and the Cal States do not super score.
Oh, okay.
Mostly private schools. Mostly private schools. And not all of them do.
USC does?
Yeah, those are USC students.
Yes. Yes.
For early action students applying for the decision, what's the last date that they can take the ACT or SAT?
For some schools, they say the last testing they'll take is October, some will take March. So if you have a student where the intent is to do early, they need to be a little bit more proactive in making sure they're getting their testing done.
I mean, October of senior year.
Yes, a senior year, sorry. Yes. This question, and then you had a question, and then we'll end.
Recommendation letters.
Yes.
So if you're applying to a couple of number of schools, the counselors, or the teachers, if you're asking them for recommendations letter, I mean, it's okay, they're not gonna say at some point, you know, I'm so full of.
No, teachers do say they're full. So seniors are told very early on in the fall, you need to go ask Mr. Crosley or Ms. Berman or whoever you're gonna go ask.
Could they do junior year? Could they start at the end of junior?
You can ask, but the teachers will forget. I mean, the expectation is that usually it's, right when we return to school. Sometimes juniors will say, hey, next year, would you be willing to write me a letter of rec? And that's fine. But then,
Are you gonna say, you have to, I'm applying to 4 schools, can you make me 4 recommendations?
yeah, that's normal. That's normal. That's what, the teachers do that all the time, the counselors. And then last question, and then we'll stay after to answer any questions that we didn't.
My daughter was on, she would go to the college sites to see what the schools are looking for, and she was comparing what students did at Chaminade that got accepted, and it kind of gave her a heads up of what they were looking for as far as the test scores. Do you recommend that so they can kind of get more focused on what school that they're shooting for?
So is she looking at the scattergrams?
She was looking at that, and then she went to NYU to see what they were looking for, just to give her some type of insight. Do you recommend that, or do you think that boxes her?
No, I mean, when
scares
they're
them.
meeting with the guidance counselors, we show them all this. We show them how to multi scattergrams to see what the average GPA was of the students from Chaminade that got accepted there, and to see what the average test scores were, so they have an idea of, is this a reach school for me? Is this a target school? Is this a safety school for me? And that's how they're going to form that list and have them in the different categories and make sure they have a balanced list. Because we don't want them to just end up with all reach schools, because then the percentages of them getting in, that's not very good. So we do encourage them to look at that and just kind of see where they're at and to be realistic with themselves. If they're going in, I'm going to go to UCLA and Stanford. Those are my 2 choices, but I have a 3-2. Probably not. So it's encouragement.
It seems a little harsh sometimes with 9th and 10th graders, and I know it's, it can be like eye-opening, but like Mr. Borchum said, once you get over the shock of looking at them, sometimes students have looked at them and been like, oh my gosh, I got to step it up, I got to do something. And so it's better in 9th grade.
My disclaimer is always, don't look at this and shatter your hopes and dreams. If that's your number one, that's your number one. But you have to be realistic with yourself. They have to come to the realization there are some schools that are going to be better for you than others, and they have to be realistic.
Do you guide them into that reality?
That's our ability.
All right, since it's after 9, I know we'll stay and answer questions after, but
There will be an email coming out for me letting you know when the video is posted on Blackboard under my College and Coffee link. The PowerPoint will also be up there, so if you wanted to go back and review the slides, you'll be able to do that.
And we'll put some of those links.
Thank you.